All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nora Alamari. I am an application consultant here at Zobrio. I will be reviewing the Affordable Care Act forms and the preparation work that we need to start working on as soon as possible. If you have any questions or comments, please use the comments tool to submit those, or feel free to email me. My email's on the screen here, or you can just call me, or you can just forward your questions to me via the consultant that you are used to working with, and they can forward the questions to me, or suggestions for future webinars also. Nothing will be better than that. So let's go ahead and get started. To summarize what we covered in the past, the ACA is reporting to the IRS, the Affordable Care Act. It's all about reporting to the IRS who has health insurance through their employer and who doesn't. The employer has to file 1095-Cs, one form for each employee, and a 1094-C. This is one form that is electronically submitted to the IRS from the employer that is basically a summary of all the 1095-Cs that were provided to the employees and will be part of the e-file that will be filed end of March. The process, first of all, you want to start by looking at how many employees you have. You need to make sure that you are an applicable large employer. This is based on the number of full-time employees that you have in 2015. This is 50 employees or more. And I believe the same rule applies to many other forms and areas that the IRS deals with. So the same definition applies here also. So you have to have 50 full-time employees or more, or the equivalent in 2014. The first thing we want to work on is make a spreadsheet of the email addresses of your employees. This is something that some programs that produce the ACA forms will need. We're not sure why, but in the case of Fundware, for example, this piece of information is needed for the program itself, not for the ACA form. The email address is not going on the form anywhere. It might be in the future, but not this year. So this is one thing that you want to work on. In Fundware, we can work with you to add a data item that you can plug in the email address right away, or if you want to start with a spreadsheet and we can work with that later on, it's up to you, but it is something that the program requires and not the form.
They can't. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. All right. So to begin with, we want to prepare for the forms. The first thing we want to do is gather a list of the employees, spouses and or dependents who are covered in the health plan that you as an employer offer. So basically these dependents and spouses are covered under your plan. This information can be collected from your health insurance provider or from your HR department. And it's a simple yes or no. There are no values, no numbers, nothing, just a yes or no for each month. And if that individual is covered for the 12 months of 2015, you can just simply check one box for all months of the year. Now, to identify the individuals, the form asks you to use the date of birth or the Social Security number. Because this information we are working on gathering now, and we don't know if next year the IRS is going to require both pieces of information, we recommend that you gather both of them, the Social Security and the date of birth. It is the spreadsheet that I've put together to gather this information is going to have both columns. It's up to you if you want to use either or use both of them. It's up to you. But like I said, in the future, we don't know if the IRS is going to say both pieces of information are needed. Now, in the spreadsheet that I have the little header for, I have included the employee name and the employee social security number. This is just simply to tie up the individuals to that employee for when we import this information to the big spreadsheet that we will look at later on. So the first step is to gather the emails, then the spouses and or dependents. This is everyone who is covered under the health plan that you as an employer offer. The next thing you want to work on is to determine if you offer a plan that provides minimum value. This information can be gathered or calculated with your health insurance provider. They can help you work that up, or if they haven't already. The IRS has a link that will take you to a website that has a calculator that you can work on with your accountant, maybe. It is something that you need to figure out. It is something that will make a big difference in how the IRS is going to evaluate the plan that you offer to your employees. So this is something that I would plan on focusing on and work hard at getting the right numbers in, maybe before anything starts. Once you know that you have to file, meaning once you know that you are an applicable large employer, this is the next step that you want to work on. So contact your health insurance provider and ask them about this. They should know what they have offered. They should know, they should be able to help you with this. The next thing you want to gather for your from your employees is the lowest cost monthly premium for self-only coverage. This is the amount that an employee can pay and get the minimum health insurance through you as an employer. It may not be the same amount that the employee pays for coverage every month if they have the spouse, if they have dependents, if they have vision, if they have dental, the flexible spending, all of that is not part of that amount. This amount is just the lowest that they can pay to get insurance through your organization. So again, this number may be available through your health insurance provider, or maybe your HR department or your payroll department can find this information. Maybe you will resort to looking at the pamphlets that you handed out to your employees. This is this number is going to be on the form, and it's going to decide whether there is a penalty or not. So you have to make sure that you look for the right amount and check it once and twice and as many times as you can to make sure that you are including the correct amount here. The lowest cost premium, the data, like I said, can be gathered possibly through your health insurance provider. It will be entered as an amount for each month. So I've put together a little template, a spreadsheet, and you can see it's just a header with the employee name, the employee social security number, a column for each month, and if the amount does not or has not changed throughout the year, then you can just put one amount in one column, and that is included in the spreadsheet. The data that you enter here will be then imported into the big spreadsheet that is part of the the ACA, the Affordable Care Act form program that the software makers are providing this year. So this is just part of many things that we have to gather. But again, this number is what you will be spending most of the time on as far as this project is concerned. To check things, now you're going to review all the information that you have gathered. Make sure that you have information on all the employees who receive health insurance through your organization. This includes, of course, any part-time employee, any retired, any contract employees, anybody that receives health insurance through your organization is going to have a form handed out to them by February 1st and part of the e-file that you will file with the IRS at the end of March. Anybody that receives it, and if you have any questions about that, we can help answer those. Of course, this includes the employees who weren't covered for, like maybe you have an employee that started today and their health coverage will not start until January. This employee will have a form with a code, and they have to receive a form from you, and they have to be part of the e-file. The general rule is if they receive health insurance through your organization and you are an applicable large employer, they have to be a report. You have to have a report for them. The form is given to them, and they have to be in the e-file that you file with the IRS. A quick look at the form. This is what the form looks like this year. This was just released a month ago, maybe a little more than a month ago. And you can see that the form has really 3 parts. The first part is the employee contact information. This is the name, the address, the social security number, and there is the part for the employer. And this part is going to be entered into the program because like a global parameter kind of thing where it doesn't have to be entered for every employee. This is where you as an employer will be identified. Then in part 2 is where we will be doing most of the work, most of the data gathering here. The part 2 has 3 lines, lines 14, 15, and 16. In the lines 14 and 16 are basically codes that you will have to work on to figure out what codes are appropriate for that employee. This is something that requires a lot of work and a lot of understanding of those codes. The code in line 14 describes the coverage that you as an employer offers to the employee and the spouse and the dependents. Now, one thing I want to bring up is that if you offer health coverage to dependents but limit the number of dependents, that means you did not offer coverage to dependents. So just keep that in mind when you are reviewing the codes to decide which code is going to work for the employee and for the month. So you might end up using more than 1 code in the year, more than 2 codes, and they are different for every employee. Every case is different, but just keep in mind that if you limit anything, then you didn't offer it. So here's the list of the codes. The most popular, the most common one, according to the IRS, is 1E, which is the coverage that is provided to the employee, the spouse, and the dependents without a limit, as in without a limit to the number of dependents. Line 15 is where we will be entering, or we will be adding the lowest cost monthly premium for self-only, the value that we talked about earlier, where It's not how much the employee pays, it's how much they were offered, and it was optional for them to choose to add to it, to add dependents or to add a vision plan or a dental plan or some new ones that are coming out recently, like extra disability and life and all of those. Those are not part of that number. So line 15 is about this number, and you can, I mean, we'll go over an example, and you can see how all of that is going to be put into the form. The next line is line 16 in the form, and that line tells the IRS which safe harbor you used, meaning how did you decide that this was affordable. This is very important here because the affordability has to be calculated. For each employee, you might end up calculating different calculations to decide which code is going to work best for that employee. So you have someone that makes so and so many and they pay that much for the lowest premium. If I use the 2F and end up with the percentage that is not 9.5% or lower, then maybe I need to look at the 2H, which is the rate of pay, the hourly rate. So you might have to, again, use all the calculations before you can decide which code you are going to plug in for that employee. And that part is done manually, unfortunately, because, again, you have to do a lot of calculations before you decide which code you are going to end up using on the form. And just another piece of information that I wanted to talk about is code 2G, the Federal Poverty Line Safe Harbor. That federal poverty line is simply just keep in mind that if the lowest cost premium is $93.18 a month or less, you can use that code. It's that simple. 93.18, 93.18 a month. That's based on the federal poverty line for 2015 and calculated and divided by 12 months, you end up with $93.18. If that number is what the employee pays for the lowest premium, then you can use that safe harbor. And again, you might have employees that can use this and employees that can't. Depends on how the calculations turn out. The other thing is when you use the hourly rate, you are going to multiply that by 130 to determine the average of what the income is in a month, and then you will see if the lowest cost premium divided by that is 9.5% or less. That makes you that still makes it the hourly rate. Let's go back to it. That still makes it the 2H. Just because you multiplied it by 130 does not mean that you are going to be using the wages. The W-2 wages are just the W-2 wages, how much they make in a year. If you use the hourly rate and multiplied it by 130, then that is the code that you are going to be using. Just keep that in mind. Make sure that you are using the right code, because otherwise, if you use the wrong code, then when the IRS reviews the forms, they're gonna they're gonna take this as a person who was offered a plan that is not affordable. Not to talk about the negative stuff, but the penalties, or what is referred to as the employer shared responsibility, is pretty hefty. It's about $260.50 per month per employee. So make sure that when you use the code, you have looked at all the codes that are there, you've made all the calculations that you can make, and used the best code for the best number and the best calculations. So now let's look at the example. We're just going to go over this quickly here. If you have a new employee that was hired in February, but the coverage didn't start until May, this is one of the cases that I was talking about where if they are hired, but they didn't get health insurance because it doesn't it doesn't kick in for another 60 days or so, that's the typical waiting period, then there is a code for that, and that needs to be included. You can see in the example here that it was offered, but it wasn't starting yet. So there are codes to be used. This employee selected to not take the coverage, so they waived the coverage. So no amounts were entered, but the codes indicate that a plan was offered. So this is just a quick example that will show you the, and I guess that amount that I used for the federal poverty line in this webinar is incorrect. I do apologize. It is $93.18 a month. So the percentage has to be calculated correctly. It's my mistake. I apologize. It's $93.18, not a cent more. That or lower, then you can use that code. But in this case, for this example, the employee waived the coverage, so it doesn't matter really. In line 14, there was no offer of coverage January through April because of a certain reason, which is it didn't start. And then 1A as of May, meaning that there was an offer of coverage that is affordable, so the correct code was used. No entries were made in line 15 because there is no amount because the employee selected to not join that plan. And then in line 16, the codes, the safe harbor codes that were used indicate that 2A means that they weren't employed by this employer, and then 2D means that it was a non-assessment period, the waiting period for the health insurance to start, and then no entry meaning that they just didn't choose it, they just waived the coverage. Another thing that you want to prepare for, and does take a little bit of your time, is to to get the TCC code that will allow you to electronically file on the IRS's website. This TCC code, I realize the name is the same as the code used to file the 1099 forms on the IRS's website, but it's not the same. It is a different code. Every type of filing has a different TCC code, and in this case, of course, it's a new one. If you have any questions about that, please email me and let me know. You can use the same login because if you recall from filing the 1099s, you log in and then you enter your TCC code. So you can log in and then register to get a new TCC code for the Affordable Care Act, the ACA forms. If you choose to register for a new login altogether, then just keep in mind that the process is not that quick and does ask a lot of questions of the person that will be signing up. Things like their Social Security and their income, because the IRS wants to verify the information and hold that person responsible. They will check on that person and then send the TCC code in an email. So it is, that is how the process is. They do require information about the person who will be held responsible for the form. So you can't make things up because they will check. It does include, I am not sure about the date of birth, but they will ask for the Social Security and the W-2 wages from last year. And once they approve, they will email you the code that you can use to e-file. The e-filing is at the end of March. The forms are due with the W-2 forms. They're just like the W-2 forms. They are due this year on February 1st. And again, it's just like the W-2s. You can correct things and we print them. You can file corrections once it's after March 31st. We do recommend that you don't file right away, of course, and to give you enough time for the employees to review the forms and possibly come back and say, you know, there's a spelling error or anything like that. So they will, so they have time to make the corrections, and you make the corrections before you submit the file to the IRS. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that the forms are going to be printed using the program that the software maker will provide. But the entire process of gathering information is really little spreadsheets that will then be combined or imported, however you want to refer to the process, as it'll all come into the bigger spreadsheet that will then be used to in the forms program. If you have any questions, just feel free to just email me any question you have. We're here to help. We're not going to help you. We're not going to help you figure out the codes. We are going to help you report in the best way possible. Keep in mind that you have to have information for your employees who are covered with the health insurance plan. No empty boxes are allowed. Empty boxes are bad. Empty boxes will end up with penalties, $260.50 per month per employee. The other thing you want to keep in mind is that the percentage of the covered employees is 95%. You have to have offered the health insurance to 95% of your full-time employees. And all this is going to go on the 1094 form. It's 95% of your full-time employees. All the employees that have health insurance through your organization need to be reported. All the boxes have to be completed. If you list an individual and not check boxes, that's bad. If you don't know anything, then do your best to find that piece of information. And I guess that covers all of it, and hopefully things will go smooth. Like you've seen, the process is not impossible. It's just a long process to understand what you're looking for, and hopefully matching it with the best code that you can find. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
Hey, Nora, there are a few questions in chat.
Okay. Are employers required to provide health insurance coverage for dependents? Yes, they are. Keep in mind that if an employee, you as an employer, if you have an employee that went on the health insurance market exchange is what they call it, if they go and purchase health insurance for their dependents and or their spouse, and they end up receiving a premium tax credit, then the employer shared responsibility provision will kick in and you will end up covering that. So anytime an employer gets on the exchange website and purchase health insurance for their dependents or for their spouse for any reason, and they receive a premium tax credit, then you will, the IRS will inform you, and they will be contacting you to talk about the employer shared responsibility. Now, there is no, as far as the Affordable Care Act, there's no mentioning of what the employer will end up paying, bottom line paying, but the employer is responsible, because you as an employer should offer insurance to the employees, the spouses, and the dependents without a limit to the number of dependents. Can we get a copy of this presentation emailed to us? Definitely. I will do that. Let me just I'm also going to email the templates that I showed you in the presentation, where you can use it to gather information for the dependents and the lowest cost premium. What if not all employees have email addresses? That is something that, like I said, is not for the IRS. It's for the program itself. It could be something that the program will be using to link the information together. What we have been telling our clients is to gather the information that you have, and we will be meeting with the software makers to know what it's for really, and if it's not there, what is going to happen. But is the employer required to provide health insurance for employees on their first day, or is it okay to wait a certain amount of time before offering? With the offer comes the health insurance. There is a waiting period as far as the health insurance being offered. There is the open enrollment period, and there is all of that legal talk of what date is what and what has to come before what. That is something that you want to double check based on the individual situation, but the insurance has to be offered. Now, just one thing that I wanted to mention is that if you have a full-time employee who is not offered health insurance, or their dependents and their spouses are not offered coverage, please look into that, because come January, these people have to be covered, or again, you will go through the employer shared responsibility provision payment. So I would work on this as a priority as of right now, because with a waiting period, you might end up having a month, maybe, or two in 2016 where you have people that you have to have covered, but they're not covered because they weren't offered insurance in time. So please look into that. As for the Form 6056, unfortunately, no, I don't. But if you are, I can email you to let you know about Form 6056. Any other questions? And I will email the presentation with the template for gathering information on the two templates that you saw in the presentation to everyone. And if you want more information, please email me to let me know. Let me and let me put my email address on the screen in case you didn't have time to write it down. But Or okay. Thank you very much, everyone. I hope that you have a better understanding of what needs to be done. I am hoping that this will be an easy process for everyone. Like you saw, it's not difficult. It's just a lot of work because it's mostly manual work. And the sooner you start preparing for it, the better you are off. These things have to be, the rush for these forms is at the same time with the W-2s. So that's why we're starting now. And if you need any help, let us know. We are scheduling for the ACA work to have consultants go over the entire process with you. So let me know if you need any of that scheduled. If you need any help, just let me know. Thank you very much.